Let's talk sport and how I'm starting to think it all might be rigged, and just give a bit of an Australian take on all this. So I see it all the time. I see in America, I see the basketballers, I see the baseballers and the gridiron players and all that. They throw up the devil horns, they throw up the 666. They seem to do it every time something goes well, which would make sense because they've sold their soul to Satan, and everything they do is in the name of Satan, and every earthly rich they get is because of Satan. And if they don't sell their soul to Satan, there's just another 1,000 people willing to take their place. It's like killing a fly. You kill that fly, there's another 1,000 there. It's the same sort of principle. So I see it playing out in America all the time. Now in Australia, there's sort of two things, or three sort of layers I want to talk about today. First, there's there's cricket. There's reverse swing of the cricket ball. There's drop-in pitches in cricket, and also 2016, what happened here. So to give you a bit of a landscape of the sporting, we'll give you a bit of an understanding of the sporting landscape here in Australia. Is in the winter time, we've got two major codes. We've got the AFL, that's the big one. The AFL's played, the epicenter is Victoria, and it's extremely popular in South Australia and Western Australia, and it's picking up. It's picking up in the eastern states, the northern states, but they're the rugby league heart ground. So rugby league's the second one. The heart ground here is here in New South Wales, in Sydney, and it's also very popular in Brisbane. AFL's more popular in Sydney than what it is in Brisbane. I've just spent 11 years in Brisbane, and AFL just isn't really talked about. It's not, they're not really into it. But in Sydney there is an appetite for it. So the AFL's the big one. Footy's the AFL. I call it footy because that's my favourite. Is the big one, and it's played in the southern states. Now, back in 2016, you'll probably recall, those who watch sport, you'll probably recall that Leicester City in the Premier League. Leicester City won the Premier League, and that was a huge result. What do you read that towel? Leicester City was a huge result. As far as I know, they didn't do anything before. Looking at soccer, it's always Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, and in more recent times Manchester City, because they've got a rich owner. So now that's how Premier League rolls. So Leicester City out of nowhere in 2016 won the competition. Same thing happened here in Australia in the AFL. The Western Bulldogs won it in 2016. Now, they hadn't won a flag since the 50s. They'd only ever won one. They've been in the competition 100 years. They're just a club that make up the numbers. They occasionally play in a prelim. They played in prelims about 10 years ago, but never really threatened for a flag. And then out of nowhere in 2016, they won the flag. They did it from 7th. That's only ever been done once in the history of the AFL since they went to the top 8. Adelaide did it in 1997. The Crows, they won it, I think, from 7th. They're the only team, and then the Western Bulldogs repeated that. I remember that first week of the finals there in Perth. I watched that game. The Western Bulldogs were ruthless. They were brilliant. They were absolutely sensational. And the momentum just built right through September, and they just beat everybody. And in the grand final, they were just unstoppable in that last quarter. So that was interesting to see that. And then in the rugby league, Cronulla's the club. They're the rabble club, really. But when your career's over, those players that misbehaving means they just they do something that's this society, this socialist agenda we've got at the moment, this social progression. They step a foot outside of that, and they're in trouble. And Captain Offended and the Perfect Ones scream from the rooftops, and they get punished, and they end up at Cronulla. So Cronulla, again, they'd been in the competition 50 years. They'd never won the comp. They'd never even really threatened. I remember as kids, no one went for Cronulla because they were just a joke. They're very cool. They're a cool club because they're in the Shire, and they're all about the beach and stuff. But nobody never really threatened to win it. And then out of nowhere in 2016, they won it as well. So 2016 here in Australia was really a perfect storm for sport results, because a lot of people here in Australia are into the Premier League. They like the Premier League, so we experienced that as well. And then we had those two. So straight away, I'm smelling a rat. Around this time is about the time I started to wake up. I was nowhere near awake at that time. That was about the time I learned of the moon landing hoax, September 2016 was when I started to wake up. And even then I sort of thought, Last year in the AFL, 2017, Richmond won it. Richmond are by far the most popular team in the competition. They've got the biggest membership base. There's nothing better in the AFL when Richmond's up and about. That's when the competition's at its healthiest. Huge crowds in those Melbourne games. And again, a rabble of a club. They won. They used to win flags all the time back in the 70s and early 80s, but they hadn't won one since I think it was 1980, since they'd won a flag. They played one final in like 20 years or something. Just a rabble of a club. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just win the flag. Not just make finals, they win the flag. So I remember back then I still had Facebook, and I posted when they won it. I thought, I just said on this Facebook post, it just feels contrived. It just did. And everybody thought I was being stupid and idiot and all that, but I stand by it. I'm even more steadfast in that belief today. So there's that. There's that landscape of 2016. Now, cricket. I wanted to talk about cricket, the two things with cricket. So I remember, in the last 30 years, two big things have happened in cricket. There's been the advent of drop-in pitches. I'll talk about them in a sec. And there's also a concept called reverse swing that's come into the game as well. And I'll talk about that as well. So I remember back as a kid, cricket's played over 5 days. Each team bats twice if needed. Sometimes the team batting first doesn't need to bat a second time because the team batting second doesn't make up the runs in the second and third innings of that first innings. But in any case, that's the premise of the game. You get a new ball every 80 overs. Now, back in those days, I remember as a kid, Test cricket was boring. We used to watch it because there's an opportunity to watch sport with Dad, and we always liked doing that, me and my brothers. And everybody in the neighbourhood, like I was a real neighbourhood kid, we used to play in the street, the next street down, the whole group of us. It was great. We used to play cricket in the street with all our mates and all that. So we loved our cricket. We loved the one dayers more, but we still loved our Test cricket. Those days with the West Indies touring out here was brilliant. But the cricket was boring. Like sometimes, particularly those Adelaide Tests, it'd just be mind-numbing. It'd just be batting. And it was just boring. And then all of a sudden in the late 80s, early 90s, this thing called reverse swing rocks up. And it's like, right, okay. So all of a sudden now they can reverse the ball. So what that means is in cricket, so you get the new ball after at the start of the innings, and then after every 80 overs, if the team's still batting, they get a second and then maybe a third new ball. Now, with that new ball, it's hard, it's red, it's got lacquer on it, so it can swing. It hurts when it hits the batsman. It goes faster. It fizzes through the air, and the new ball's a real pivotal time in a game of Test cricket. But after about 20 overs, the ball loses its sheen. The shine comes off the ball. It gets softer. It gets easier to bat. The pitch starts to wear a little bit. All the juice goes out of the pitch. It stops moving around, and it starts becoming a little bit easier for the batsman. And that's where cricket was. It was just a batsman's game. And then all of a sudden, this new ball, this reverse swing thing started happening. What sparked my interest in this was interest is the word, is last year there was a thing called the ball tampering scandal happened in Australia. There was a game of Test cricket over there in South Africa. I think it was the last innings. It may have been the third or maybe fourth innings of the game. The game was fairly evenly poised, but it looked like South Africa were going to win the game. It seemed fairly they were on top in any case. South Africa were on top in the game. South Africa were in top in the game, and it looked like they were going to win, but Australia was still a sneaky chance. But anyway, one of the Australia players, can't remember his name. He's not a big time player. Cameron Bancroft. He was seen scuffing up the ball. Now that's big taboo in cricket. You can't scuff up the ball. So what you can do is you can shine it. So the way the swing works is traditionally the swing, I'm pretty sure it goes towards the shiny side. So it comes from the rough side and it swings towards the shiny side. We used to do it in the backyard as kids. We used to tape up a tennis ball half the side of the tennis ball so it would swing. So the cricket we played was a lot more fun, and you could get your brother out easier and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, all of it is reverse swing. The way reverse swing works is it goes in reverse, so it goes back towards the scuffed up side of the ball. So for reverse to work, you have to have that ball scuffed up big time for it to work, and shiny the other side. It has to be a real contrast for it to reverse. So scuffing of the ball is a big no-no in cricket. They can shine it on their pants. You probably see them do that, and they spit on it and carry on. They can do all that, but they can't scuff it up. And this bloke was seen doing that. He had something in his pocket, and he was scuffing up the ball. He got caught, and then all hell broke loose. The whole thing went nuclear here in Australia. Now here in Australia, there's a thing where those who cry the loudest, those who are offended the most, captain offended and the perfect ones, because they're just offended at every drop of the hat, and their lives are so perfect, they're so beyond scrutiny, all they do is sit there and criticise others. Who cry the loudest are those people, and whatever they say is what the penalty gets. It's the same thing as when these football players step out of line. Those who cry the loudest, highest, harshest penalties on social media, they're the ones who win the day. They're the ones who get the fine. Now, the ICC, they deemed it a one-match ban. That's what I thought it was. It was just a one-match ban. Don't do it again, guys. You've been seen. You've been embarrassed. What you did is against the spirit of the game, and it's cheating. But I think a one-match ban's adequate. If it happens again, well, then you're going to be in the shit. But no, no. They both got, the three of them got 12-month bans. Bancroft, I don't know. I don't know whether he'll be back. I don't think he'll be back. Dave Warner was the other one. He's an Australian opening batsman. He's a crowd favourite. He's a hard hitter of the ball. He scores runs quickly. He's a really good player. Real favourite with the kids. He got 12 months. I don't think he'll be back because he's like 33 now, 34, something like that. So why would they go back to him and go back to all that scandal and have to revisit it? Steve Smith is very, very different. He's the captain. He'd be the best batsman in certainly in Australia right now, probably the world. Him and Kohli from India would be the best batsman in the world right now. So I think he'll come back after the 12 months, which is up in about 2-3 months' time. I think he'll come back into the side for a few tests, for a few series, maybe a year as a player, and then he'll return as captain. I think he may even return as captain. I don't know how that will go down, but I think that's what will happen. But in any case, that's what happened out here. So the arse, really, the nucleus of Australian cricket side has just been ripped out, absolutely ripped to shreds. It has been, and we all, they've been playing one days, and they played a couple of test series since South Africa and before now, and they've just been getting flogged. So that sort of sets up the scene. You understand? I hope you understand how the ball works and the laws of cricket and all that sort of stuff, and the importance of the new ball. So a funny thing happened. Two things happened one thing happened 20 years ago and another thing happened 30 years ago. 30 years ago, as I say before, the cricket used to be batshit boring, the tests, and it was dying. It was almost dead test cricket 30 years ago. And then all of a sudden, these two Pakistani players, bowlers, Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis, and I'm not saying they're cheats or nothing, don't get me wrong. They brilliant bowlers, fantastic bowlers, two of the best fast bowlers you'll ever see. And they used to bowl these huge in-swinging Yorkers. They'd come in from nowhere and they just rattle the stumps. The stumps would go everywhere. Just brilliant bowlers. And they were reversing it. And this is how it started. It just come from absolutely nowhere. Nowhere reverse swing. Now, my question with reverse swing, and I'll get to the drop-in pitches in a sec, my question with drop-in pitches, with reverse swing, is that all of a sudden, I don't know if it's the same for you, but whenever I talk to somebody who's older than me, particularly people like 20 years older, you say, oh, this player, I used to say as a kid, Alan Border's great, he's one of the best batsmen ever, and they say, oh, he's not as good as this bloke, and it's just impossible. It's impossible for a player to be any better than that old bloke because that's what they saw, and it's just impossible, no matter how good the current day player is. And there's other players who are just beyond reproach in society. One of them, our big one here, is Don Bradman. So just to give a bit of a background, Don Bradman played about 50 tests. He scored about 6,000 runs and he averaged right on 100 for test cricket. The next best player, average-wise, would be, I don't know, probably players like Tendulkar or I don't know, maybe Dravid from India. They average about 60, but there's just light years between. That's not a good term, is it? Light years. That's a NASA globe term, and the Earth's not a globe. It's flat. But it's just eons. It's eons apart between Bradman and the rest of the field. So this guy is held up in Australian society as just a beacon. He's an idol. Everyone loves him, and you can never speak ill of Bradman. One guy used to, Ian Chappell, I really like and admire because he just shoots from the hip, and I don't think that man's controlled by no one. He's just his own man. I really like Chappell. He used to be scathing of Bradman. I used to think, why? Why are you so scathing? I think I know. So I've been researching Mr. Bradman, and he was a Freemason. So as soon as I hear Freemason and that they're a Freemason, I'm thinking, you're just a liar. Everything you're telling me is a liar. So in my other video the other day, I said everything's up for discussion. I believe Bradman now is up for discussion. His whole career, this had happened in the 30s and 40s. How can you prove he scored all those runs at that average? He's a Freemason. Freemasons are liars. They're occultic. They're Satanists, and they're basically, they deliver this matrix we live in, this false reality we live in. Those of us within the body of Christ are 10 foot off the ground, and we can see it all because we've got eyes to see and ears to hear. And he's one of the ones that is pushing all these lies. But my question is, if Don Bradman is so perfect, so beyond reproach, such a doyen, such an expert at everything, why didn't he invent reverse swing? Why didn't he cotton onto it? Like, not only didn't he master it, he didn't even know it existed. Like, it didn't happen until like the late 80s, this reverse swing shit. So where did it come from? Why did it just appear? You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know, you go Freemason, cricket was dying, and then all of a sudden this new thing arrived, and it brought Test cricket to life. I remember when I was in my 20s, Test cricket here at Australia was sensational. Some of the series we had out here, some of the finishes were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The game come to life because of reverse swing. So there's that. The other one I wanted to talk about was the concept of drop-in pitches. So in Australia, traditionally, the way cricket works is the pitches are there all year round. They sit there at grounds like the SCG, the MCG, the Adelaide Oval. They're multi-purpose ground. They play cricket in the summer and they play football in the winter, whether it be rugby league, soccer, AFL, whatever. So around about 20 years ago, they stopped doing that because the reasoning was during the winter, the centre wicket would become a glue pot when it rains. It'd be too hard for the players. You know, in these days, they can't just put soil over the top of it or whatever, or put a protective layer. Oh, no. They have to do these drop-in pitches. So drop-in pitches are basically, they're pitches that are grown in a greenhouse. They put them on the back of a truck and then they lower them into the ground and they play cricket on that wicket. So they can doctor those pitches to whatever they want. They can age however they want. They can just look after those pitches, and I think they can just contrive results. And I think that's what's going on, because Test cricket has gone from, in the 80s, a game where they was still batting the first innings in the fourth day, and now they're lucky if they can bat out the first day, like the first innings, and sometimes they're playing the second innings in the second day, mostly the third day. But if you can score 300 in your first innings, you're competitive, you're on top. And if you can set a total in the fourth innings of over 200, you're bloody going to win the game. And that was not always the case in cricket. Just about every game now gets a result. Every game's a good spectacle. It's a lot better game to watch, and it's all been the advent of this reverse swing and drop in pitches. Now, where does this tie in with Australia getting caught last year? I don't know. I don't know how deep it goes. Did those cameras spot something they shouldn't have spotted? Is it part of a psyop? I don't know, but it's all, to me, it's all becoming quite obvious that it's all staged, that it's all contrived. I don't think the players would participate in it. My brother used to play football, and he goes, "No way, mate. There's no way the players are in on it." So I don't. Maybe the top line ones, because you see, as high as you go, Don Bradman was a Freemason. He was the best player. Different blood type I've talked about, only a certain percentage of people have got it, 7% of the population. So the Australian captain, would he be? You just don't know. Like, maybe, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. It's happening. Like, you see it in the car races too. The big thing that's come in car races is the safety car. I mean, it's car racing, for God's sakes. I mean, there's been one death at Bathurst. I think there's only been one death at Bathurst in the whole 60 years there've been ratings in that bloody race. And then all of a sudden everything's unsafe, and they have to, every time something happens, this safety car comes out. And you see it sometimes. I watch it with my brother, and I say, there'll be a safety car in a minute, and sure enough, there's just this bolt will arrive on the truck, a bolt, you know, and a bloke can just run out and just sweep it off between the car. They're just cars, you know. They know where they are. Everything's analysed now to within an inch of its life. But no, they stop the whole race. And the whole field banks up behind this safety car. So a race that was once boring is now close again, and it's regulated to within an inch of its life. There's rules everywhere. Equalisation in sports, you hear that all the time. Equalisation, we want a fair playing field, salary caps, and all that sort of stuff. It's to contrive results. It really is. The evidence is there, guys. You just got to open your eyes, open your ears, and the whole thing is there. And it's all, to me, sports contrived. And I think I'll watch the Boxing Day test on Wednesday, because I get to watch it with my old man and potentially one of my brothers. I'll watch that because it'll be a nice family affair, and it's good to watch. It's good fun to watch, but you just know it's contrived and you're just wasting your time. And I reckon my time's better served reading the Bible, to be frank.